which is where we're going to head next for the elimination match. Muzzy and Samuel Sao waiting in the winners, but JasonZhou and Kolento, which is coming up next. Both these guys fighting for their lives, and both of them have been to a World Championship before.
Yes, and it doesn't really matter how you end up slicing these brackets up. Anytime you look at an elimination match, this was going to happen one way or another. It's been an incredibly stacked field, but for Kolento and JasonZhou to be there, this is truly a big one, because Kolento's looking for redemption from his 2014 Worlds appearance, where he came up quite short. And JasonZhou, he's one of the last remaining Chinese representatives that can secure one of those championships for China.
All right, well, it's time to get the match underway. So let's bring out our first competitor representing Europe, the K-God himself. Please welcome to the stage, Kolento. And his opponent, back-to-back World Championship appearances, it's JasonZhou. And, you know, if Kolento were to fall here, that would mean bad things for Europe, starting off the World Championship with 2 players eliminated right off the bat.
And so far, the only match that Europe has won at this event is versus Europe.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is quite the contrast from what we've seen for the rest of the year in HCT, where they had an absolute dominant performance. I believe the only region that was actually above 50% overall in matches throughout the year.
Yeah, they were 63% win rate coming into the World Championship, so definitely underperforming as opposed to their standards. But taking a look at the lineups, some slight differences here. Both ban Control Warlock, but the difference comes in the Druid deck, with JasonZhou having Aggro Druid and Kolento having Jade Druid. So that's going to be where the differences come into play with their lineups.
Yeah, not much of a surprise to see on the ban of Warlock in this matchup. Both opposing lineups are quite vulnerable to that individual matchup. So I'm curious to see how Aggro Druid performs, because I've been worried about Jade Druid securing a win against a lot of players.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great battle, so let's go ahead and get things underway.
Elimination match. Kolento versus JasonZhou.
I watch a lot of videos, talk to my friend about the strategy, about the lineup I need to bring.
Played against Jason many times. He was being lucky against me. I don't think he played so well though.
This year, every player, they all are very good players. So it would be a very tough tournament for me.
Kolento versus JasonZhou. Ready, set, go!
Kolento just straight up calling out JasonZhou, saying that he doesn't think he plays very well, and maybe that was the case for you know, a couple of his matches early on, but you don't get to the world stage. What, this is his 4th time in a little over a year?
Shall bring victory.
By not playing well?
You don't?
No, you don't.
I must be playing really well then.
Well, we'll get things underway with JasonZhou starting off with Rogue, and Kolento with this Highlander Priest, and Prince Keleseth in the opening hand.
It's not a bad one to start with. It's one of the most important cards in the matchups where your opponent's trying to control what you do, rather than trying to wipe you out before you're able to stabilize the position. And Rogue's not a deck that wants to play defense. Has a couple tools for that, but it mostly wants to giddy up and start dealing damage. So having Keleseth means that Kolento's going to have a hard time using Potion of Madness later on in the game. It means that Spirit Lash and Dragonfire Potion may not always be able to clear an entire board. And those effects are quite important when this matchup is really about Jason pushing the damage onto Kolento and putting him to the test as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And if what we've seen today holds true, then JasonZhou is probably about to draw patches. At least now it's a 2-2 since he got to play Keleseth beforehand, but great start for JasonZhou right off the bat. And you know, we've gone back and forth talking about this matchup specifically. And one thing that I wasn't pleased with was the way JasonZhou played this matchup in his first match against Muzzy. Yeah. He was making a lot of questionable trades, and at the end of the day, he was 4 damage short from being able to kill him.
Like that trade right there.
Yeah, like, I mean, 2 extra damage may not mean much, especially at this stage, but JasonZhou has been making those trades all the way up until later in the game, and passing up opportunities to Bone Mare outside of a situation where Shadow Reaper Anduin would be, like on turn 7, when Shadow Reaper Anduin wouldn't even be a possibility. So we'll see if he's learned from that over the course of the day. But I was worried. It worried me the way he played that earlier matchup.
Yeah, there's a couple things really to consider with trading with rogue decks, especially versus a matchup like he's in with Kolento right now. Is you can make yourself less vulnerable to situations. Wild Pyromancer is always something to think about. Potion of Madness, those are something that are always going to be on your mind. But I think one of the big factors for him here is that he actually drew Cobalt Scalebane. So if he can keep the board fairly clean for a majority of the game and then land a Cobalt Scalebane with one other minion, it's really difficult for Kolento to come back from that. It's one of the tech cards in his rogue deck that a lot of players have been favoring to cut because it's not so strong in the other matchups.
Yeah.
So I actually think that Cobalt Scalebane influences the trade quite a bit here, but Kolento's hand is looking so good.
A lot of removal. By trading into the Blood Mage Stalnos, he does play around Potion of Madness, being able to trade in Potion of Madness.
And that looks like a pretty decent draw as well. It could open up the Edwin Van Cleef in this situation. Kolento choosing to just pass here. Something else that the trade over the Blood Mage did was it prevented Wild Pyromancer Potion of Madness specifically. If Kolento takes that 2-1, it just dies to the Wild Pyromancer afterwards.
Yeah.
If Kolento were to play the Wild Pyromancer afterwards, it means there's just a 3-1 on board contesting it. We just didn't really have that strong of a play this turn where his options are concerned. He was kind of forced to pass.
Yeah, talking about their deck list a little bit, another decision that JasonZhou has made has been to cut the second copy of Elven Minstrel, which can also be a great card in this matchup because a lot of times it comes down to whether or not you can find those power turns right when you need them and having the resources to be able to reload after removal. Being able to hit Bone Mare, quicker, or even Vilespine Slayer sometimes can be an MVP in this matchup if it hits Priest of the Feast or Raza. So being able to just get to those minions quicker oftentimes helps you in this matchup. And JasonZhou has opted to go for that Cobalt Scalebane instead of the second Elven Minstrel.
Yeah, it looked to me like his deck list is really broken down from the perspective, just being all around quite strong. He's got the 1 Scalebane, the 2 Chain Gangs, the 1 Minstrel, the 1 Tar Creeper, and a Sonya in there. Rather than try to be stacked against one particular archetype, he's chosen to focus just on more balance. But that's been the opposite of what we've been seeing from a lot of the successful players thus far. They've been teching for specific matchups and punishing people with those tech choices.
Yeah, take Muzzy, for instance, who defeated JasonZhou in the first round of the day. His decks are definitely teched more for faster matchups. And so it helps him against, in this tournament, a wider range of decks since a lot of players are bringing Tempo Rogue and Aggro Druid. But maybe since Kolento has Jade Druid in his lineup as opposed to Aggro Druid, that these decisions from JasonZhou are going to help him fare better in this matchup as opposed to his previous one.
Oh my.
It just happens.
Well,
The
like
Hearthstone
you said,
gods are punishing players for drawing Prince Kelsit by
is a
giving them
2-2.
patches.
He does have Edwin Van Cleef, so this does force some resources from Kolento at the end of the day. But this is not the situation JasonZhou really wants to end up in. I will say that I think he has 2 very important cards in here with Cobalt Scalebane and Leroy Jenkins, but now Kolento's also drawn Shadow Reaper Anduin, and he's got Psychic Scream coming up. He's got the Mass Dispel this turn if he wants it. He's going to be able to wipe a lot of power off board in the coming turns and really put Jason to a test of card economy, really, and that's where those 2 Elven Minstrels come in. If your board gets cleared, you have to have some gas in the tank to be able to push past it.
Yeah, he's, 1 card less likely to draw that reload that he will so desperately need moving forward.
And that coin is going to be very vital, I think, to Kolento's success this game, not one he wants to waste.
Ooh, a Shadow Step, though. If JasonZhou can get in some damage in a few turns, he will be able to have that 12 damage burst from hand with Leroy, Shadow Step Leroy. So that can often catch priests off guard in situations, since a lot of times they're stabilizing at relatively low health and then using Shadow Reaper Anduin to cement themselves in the game.
Well, there was really one card that Priest got from Kobolds and Catacombs that helped the deck out. And right now it's Psychic Scream, right in the center of Kolento's hand. And that is quite an important card against Scalebane because the previous way to wipe the board was with Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah.
And since it's a dragon, you can't hit it with that card.
Must consider.
Yeah, and right now, JasonZhou's going into turn 7. He's been holding on to a card, which is Leroy Jenkins, that has been in his hand. just since the very beginning.
Yeah, right now
Since turn
that
2.
that card to Kolento looks like it's
Bone Mare.
It's Bone Mare, exactly. If it was Shadow Step, it likely would have been used with the Keleseth. There's the random card generation from the Holy Nova, and now Elven Minstrel's drawn, but there's nothing for Jason to combo it with.
Yeah, and if JasonZhou just plays nothing onto this board, then Kolento is going to have huge reads as to what's in his hand.
You might be just looking at a Leroy or an Elven Minstrel on this turn, and that Leroy's certainly going to get Shadow Stepped, I believe.
I don't know, because it is sort of protected. Shadow or Death and Spirit Lash are really like the only 2 things that can reach it.
Holy Smite.
Holy Smite, I guess, yeah.
Akanai Soul Priest, a Kazakus.
Akanai Soul Priest would just answer right away. Kazakus with a 1-mana potion. I guess there's a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Curious Glimmer Root into Backstab or an SI7 agent.
The Highlander Priest decks are all one-ofs, but they have a lot of redundancy. That's what lets the deck work, is a lot of its cards serve the same purpose. They're just to provide similar styles of effects that in some situations work out very well, but in some situations you may be a little bit pressed to find the right combination. But either way, Kolento is under pressure here, but the Priest of the Feast, Power Word Shield, Binding Heal, he's got plenty of ways to heal up, and I think it's a matter of time before Jason just runs out of gas.
I mean, he does have that max burst of 9 damage with Leroy Holy Nova plus the dagger hit. In a world of, what did we see earlier? 50 damage in a single turn.
Oh gosh, Samuel Zhou.
From Samuel Zhou. 9 damage for 8 mana does not seem like a lot.
Now when you can deal 50 for 10, I mean.
I wonder.
Back in the day, 9 damage, you had to have 2 Chillwind Yetis stick on the board and then a hero power. That was your 9 damage burst.
Sometimes I feel like you're older than I am.
I like to measure age in dock pose.
TJ is 0.3 Doc Pones, and that's a lot.
That would make me 8 years old.
Jason struggling to find something reasonable here. I mean, it looks to me like the way out of this game is it's just not here. The Priest of the Feast is so much pressure for Jason to deal with that I'm curious if he feels like he needs to, if he picks up South Sea Deckhand, for instance, that he needs to actually kill the Priest of the Feast instead of trying to kill Kolento.
Yeah.
I don't think either way is a winning play right now, so he's got to hope that Kolento just doesn't have many spells and can't really do anything about this.
Yeah, the one thing about holding on to South Sea Deckhand is you can couple it with Bone Mare and get immediate value out of the Bone Mare the following turn, but is that damage worth leaving up a Priest of the Feast that's probably going to heal for more than your South Sea Deckhand Bone Mare is going to do?
Kolento's not even going to play the Shadow Reaper Anduin.
At this point, there's not really a reason to. He can just heal up a bunch and then play Shadow Reaper Anduin after he's expended all those heal spells. Mind Blast from the Lyra.
Yep, Lyra generating all these resources too. This is really, I think, where Kolento is comfortable, is when he can play these control games where it's about partitioning resources and making the most of the situation. When he's in that scenario, he's absolutely one of the best in the world. And this game, he has plenty of time to keep waiting.
Inner Fire drawn as well. He might even have lethal next turn. There's another Mind Blast.
That is a lot of damage.
Yep.
Cash is in the Inner Fire now.
I might have held on to the Inner Fire and try and draw on a Divine Spirit next turn with the Mind Blast. Try and go for
Jason,
the cheeky lethal.
he just leans sideways and is like, wow, well, what could I have done in this one?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is not really much. He pretty much was facing down a very strong hand from Kolento. And that's part of Priest. It is very powerful in a lot of these circumstances. What's interesting about the Inner Fire is it actually hurts Kolento's ability to cast Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah,
this turn.
I
That's quite interesting.
understand you want to get more value out of the Lyra immediately, but that one might be... Kolento might be sad about that choice.
See him kind of shift in his chair, I think. You know, is that on his... What?
Okay.
Ah, yes, another novice engineer.
Well, he's going to hold on to the Shadowy Branduin for a little bit longer, try and get value out of this Priest in the Feast while it's still on the board. But, I mean, he's healed back to 30. JasonZhou's out of resources. He's got 3 cards, 2 of which he knows are minions, and 1 is a random Priest spell. Kolento is pretty much smooth sailing from here.
Ouch. He's fought valiantly, but sometimes it is not in the cards.
Yeah.
And let's add a Raza to that as well. Wait, can you just Velen Mind Blast and then just untap and play 2 more Mind Blasts? How does Jason heal? It would have to be from a random card effect, right?
He's got like 8 ways to win the game. Shadowy Branduin, I suppose, this is the safest, but all of those things would have got the job done. He probably could have just triple Mind Blasted that turn, and then just followed it up with Shadowy Branduin, and then done whatever he wanted.
Go on and grab lunch real quick. Come back.
Yeah, Swashbuckler might be able to pick up some form of healing.
Ooh.
Curious Glimmer Root. Pick up like Binding Heal.
2 of these cards are not in the deck. It is Cabal Songstealer and Herald of Velash.
You don't put Herald Velash in your Highlander Priest?
Well, I also don't put Dragonfire Potion in my aggressive rogue deck.
You can get a 1/1 Raza. On curve.
Sick.
But that will do it. Raza Hero Power, Mind Blast Hero Power, Mind Blast Hero Power. That means Kolento's going to take game number 1 over JasonZhou. And again, JasonZhou cannot find a win in this specific matchup. Tempo Rogue versus the Highlander Priest. It's a matchup that he's lost twice now, just today.
This matchup, he certainly fell victim to just the suite of early game potential that Kolento had. Wild Pyromancer was a big one. You know, the turn I look at was turn 4 with the Sarnet Chain Gang. Could Edwin Van Cleef have come down to that spot instead of the Sarnet Chain Gang? It opened him up to the Wild Pyromancer Potion of Madness, but it's difficult to play around those kinds of 2-card combinations.
Yeah, it's really tough. You know, along those lines, you know, they have so much removal. You talked about the redundancy of removal in their deck. At some point, you have to say, well, I can only reasonably play around certain things, but with Tempo Rogue, lots of times just got to hit him in the face.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. But Kolento takes a 1-0 lead in this series over JasonZhou. Will he be able to close it out and keep Europe's hope alive? We'll be right back after this.
我是来自 OM 战队的 JasonZhou，来自中国宁波。
我是欧米伽 Zero， 来自中国广东。
我之前参加过蛮多次那个 HCT 的比赛，现在是代表中国去打阿姆斯特丹最后的那个世界总决赛。今年 HCT 它是通过每个季度选出来的，所以高手比较多，所以打这样比赛会让我很兴奋。
我大概是从公测的时候接触炉石的吧。然后一开始可能就是个人兴趣，然后后面的话就接触一些比赛，然后慢慢的出一些成绩，现在可以说已经转入职业了。
中国的从像 HCT 的这个选拔机制，它是通过各种比赛或者天气的积分，然后选拔出来一些选手，然后这些选手去打一个预选赛，最终能进入我们的黄金的超级联赛。其实总的来说，这样的选拔机制是一步一步的，能够筛选出中国最优秀的炉石选手去打这样的比赛。
我在国内的话，参加过很多比赛，像环境赛啊，以及超级联赛、黄金总决赛。我拿过的成绩有 环境赛的成都站冠军，还有2016的秋季赛超级联赛的冠军，以及黄金总决赛的冠军，以及2017的秋季赛超级联赛的冠军。
练习的话，大概应该就跟队里的队员一起训练，比如说特兰克斯啊或者查赫本这样，就比较熟的朋友一起练习。
这次的话，我对自己还是蛮有信心的。
上次拿了4强嘛，这次也希望起码能进个4强嘛。
如果是目标的话，我肯定是希望能夺冠。
Omega Zero 可以是中国第一，反正我跟 Omega Zero 去的话，我感觉我们俩实力在所有人里面应该中上还是有的。
我们会用胜利来证明中国选手的实力不弱于任何一个赛区的选手。
我们会尽自己全力把无限红旗插到阿姆斯特丹的。
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hearthstone World Championship. We're here in Amsterdam, where there's a lot of community events going on here. It's more of a Hearthstone festival, it feels like, than a World Championship, and a lot of people come out to have fun. You can see Ant and Dr. Jikininki, a player from the Americas region, and there's some of the players backstage watching the matches. As you can see, most of those players are players that are going to play on day number 2, except for maybe Muzzy there.
Yeah, Muzzy is relaxing after his win earlier today, and but we got 2 who are playing right now.
Oh yeah,
and Kolento took a dominating game number 1 in that one, and JasonZhou, when he's feeling good, you can see it in his posture, you can see it in his face, but right now, that is a contemplative thought that is on his face. What is going wrong in the Rogue versus Priest matchups?
Yeah, if we think back to the Spring Championship where JasonZhou competed, he also competed in summer, but look back to spring, he took a big risk with his lineup. And he opted for a strategy that was to counter control, but he got in a group with all aggro.
Yeah.
So he made sort of a lineup decision. But coming into this one, JasonZhou was pretty confident in his lineup. He came to the same conclusion that a lot of players did and brought that most popular lineup with Aggro Druid, Control Warlock, Highlander Priest, and Tempo Rogue. But right now, it just seems like it's not working out for him. The tech advantages of the players that he's playing against have gotten the best of him. I feel like this is a little bit closer for him, but losing that first matchup against Highlander Priest is going to hurt.
Well, the other thing to consider, too, is that if your opponents have brought tech specifically for aggressive matchups, that can also be a big hurt to your win rate. Kolento has opted for the Oaken Summons and Ironwood Golem package, which plays that 4-mana card you see in hand. He'll get 6 armor, and he'll get a 4-cost or less minion straight from his deck into play. And when it's Fandral and 2 Ironwood Golems, you pretty much are guaranteed a solid minion that your opponent needs to handle. So getting that 3/6 taunt in the way early on, big benefit to him and being able to extend that life. For JasonZhou, it's about building a wide board position and taking advantage of that with Savage Roar, with Mark of the Lotus. And in this situation, looking like Bittertide Hydra may have to pull a bit of a weight here.
Yeah, Bittertide Hydra, a very scary card for Jade Druids because going wide with Spreading Plague doesn't necessarily hurt it, but Kolento does have a lot of tools to fight back. The one thing to notice, he did toss away Jade Blossom in his opening hand. He had that as an option for the mulligan, decided to pitch it because he realized that it's not necessarily about ramp, it's about finding the early tools and the early removal. He's got double Wrath, double Lesser Jasper Spellstone. And of course the Oaken Summons are huge tools early on to deal with aggressive decks.
There you see one of the hedges in JasonZhou's tech. Rather than 2 Galaka Crawlers, he's got 2 Hungry Crab, or he's got a Hungry Crab and 1 Galaka Crawler. That is a fairly dead card in the matchup, and this is the first test for JasonZhou. I am quite interested in Kolento mulliganing away Jade Blossom. I think a lot of it has to do with, since one of his large power hits is at turn 4 with Oaken Summons, that it's serving a similar purpose to the way that Ramps and Jades do.
Yeah.
Give you extra access to cards, and also extra access to minions that scale up the curve. No Jade Spirits in the deck means that Jade Blossom isn't as important, though. So I quite like the choice from him to mulligan that.
Yeah, and oftentimes you'll hear say terms like going wide on board and you know, going tall. Wide, of course, being a big board of small minions, whereas tall is a small board of stacking up. Yeah, Bittertide Hydras, and you can see JasonZhou going tall here because of the nod to Spreading Plague. You want to keep your board as concentrated as possible on a few minions, and he used the Saboteur early there, not only to make efficient trades, but also to, you know, keep the big minions healthy and keep the big minions alive. And that's sort of the big deal in this matchup.
And this could get quite difficult for Kolento if this continues for JasonZhou. These are important cards that are in the deck for this very important reason. And while he's at still a comfortable life total, that will quickly diminish when Bittertide Hydra's knocking you in the face turn after turn.
He did find an opportunity to ramp up. Kolento's going into 10 mana next turn.
No. Not like this.
Patches is being drawn a lot. That's the risk you take when you put it in your deck, I suppose.
There are a lot of small minions here that JasonZhou draws that are not spectacular.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at a second Bittertide Hydra. I'm looking at Corridor Creeper. Even like Druid of the Swarm is totally fine in the spot. Another board-wide buff.
And maybe in this situation, it's working in his favor because he can play this 3/3 captain, not have to worry about Patches clogging up a space on this board with Spreading Plague being a threat. But I mean, Kolento's got 10 mana available. He's got all the defensive tools that he needs with Malfurion, Spreading Plague, and also an Ultimate Infestation thrown into the mix. But it's about how to space these resources out to block the most damage incoming from JasonZhou, because there's still big threats on the board.
Bittertide untouched is just so scary for Kolento too. I mean, even though he's got the Malfurion, JasonZhou's life total is pretty much irrelevant in this one. It's whether or not Kolento can stave off the pressure. And so, you know, dealing 3 damage turn after turn doesn't really do that much unless Kolento can stabilize the board position.
Yeah, this is a pretty tough turn. You can Ultimate Infestation the Galaka Crawler to try and, you know, peel the most damage off the board immediately. You can Ultimate Infestation the Bittertide Hydra to try and soften it up so that way it's easier to take down in the future. You could go with Malfurion and try and block damage that way and get it online for the gain 3 armor or 3 attack to be able to remove some minions off the board.
Yeah, I imagine Kolento's looking at slicing through this board at this point.
Yeah.
You know, sacrifice these couple of Scarabs for some extra health and just buy time. Time is really all Kolento needs to eventually get out of this situation. Turn after turn, eventually JasonZhou will draw a weak card. JasonZhou looks at this and he goes, I can add a lot of pressure to board, but again, Spreading Plague is going to be on his mind.
Yeah.
Is there a way for him to get around that card? And I'm looking at this hand and thinking, I don't think so. It's maybe a card he just can't really beat.
Well,
Chalks it up.
He can jam 10 damage in with the Bittertide Hydra here. And that's what he's going to opt to do with the Saboteur. I think JasonZhou realizes that he may not have an opportunity to push damage through a Saboteur, and he's got to find it while he can.
So now he's put Kolento to the test. Do you have removal and Spreading Plague? And the answer to that is yes, Kolento has removal and Spreading Plague. The fact of the matter, though, is that the Bittertide Hydra is still alive. So there is a little bit of push here left, but JasonZhou wants to force that Spreading Plague and then use the rest of his minions afterwards. If he uses them all before, he will not be able to break through all the taunts that Kolento will make.
But Spreading Plague, now that Saboteur is gone, is going to be pretty devastating. Because a lot of these Druid minions, outside of being buffed by Power of the Wild and Mark the Lotus, none of them are going to be able to kill one of these Spreading Plague tokens in one hit. So a Spreading Plague would buy a lot of time. So it's still a rough scenario now that both Saboteurs are gone.
Kolento's still thinking about the fact that JasonZhou hasn't showed a living mana yet. He really wants to save this Spreading Plague until he sees a wide board position from JasonZhou, and it looks like he's going to do everything he can to buy that time, and he might have it here. This sets up the Ultimate Infestation next turn, and if JasonZhou launches a wide board position, then Spreading Plague can defend him through that.
Yeah.
Beautiful setup from Kolento.
And of course, you know, this tournament being open deckless, Kolento knows that there's no way that this Bittertide Hydra is getting through for another hit. There's no way that he can die from this Bittertide Hydra. So smart heads-up play, being patient with the resource that is Spreading Plague being so valuable against this matchup. Not jumping the gun and playing it early because he's scared of his life total. He feels like he's safe at 7 and can hold it for another turn or two.
Jason realizes there is no give left. I have to move in and hope that this works. But again, though, 2 Savage Roars used already. These minions are far less threatening when that's the case.
Yeah. And with an empty hand and only 1 card drawn per turn, JasonZhou's not really going to have an opportunity to buff these minions enough in order to push that Spreading Plague before Kolento is able to stabilize.
My thoughts are plagued.
The Crypt Lord does make it quite annoying.
I'd say so.
And maybe you even, Kolento's even thinking of Ultimate Infestation this turn because he knows that he can't die. Even if a buff comes out, that would still only be 3, 4, 10
With the hero power.
Yeah, and he'd be at 11. So it would be close,
Now,
but
he could die to Mark of Yashiraj into a
that's
buff.
true. That's true.
And I think that might be a risk he's trying to look at calculating right now. Is it worth it to try to build a better board position or a better hand to take advantage of? Or is it better to take the safe route? And frankly, I think it's better to take the safe route because he's got so many resources in hand that if he just buys enough time, he will get there.
Yeah.
And so he gives up a lot of his Spreading Plague value here, but he gets some development. He gets to hit through next turn with Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, I think the only way that he would think about playing Ultimate Infestation there over Spreading Plague was if he thought there would never be another opportunity to play Ultimate Infestation. If he thought the next turn would be even riskier to play it.
Yeah.
But there was a buff drawn. It wouldn't have been enough, but still, there was some possibilities that JasonZhou could kill him. And at this point, Kolento doesn't want to take those types of risks. I mean, that's still a pretty threatening board. That Crypt Lord.
This is still quite threatening.
Yeah.
I mean, JasonZhou did need to draw a buff to really get through some leverage this game.
So if he Ultimate Infestations and goes up to 11 on the Bittertide Hydra, would there be potential lethal outs for JasonZhou?
Again, it's a Mark of Yashiraj nonsense.
It would have to be multiple Mark of Yashiraj, I think, which he does not have. Because even with Mark of Yashiraj into a buff, he would still only have 9 damage, I believe. Because he'd have to push through the Enchanted Raven and then have 9, 10 plus with the hero power, so it still wouldn't have been enough.
Mark of Yashiraj hero power is 10 again.
Yeah.
So it would have to be double.
But he does only have 1 left in the deck because he used the first one on the Galaka Crawler early on in the game, so not even a possibility. Gonna have to hope this Corridor Creeper gets the job done.
Kolento's just close to actually killing Jason at this point, too. He's taking a lot of damage from just hitting stuff over and over again. Another Spreading Plague gets drawn, and I think that's the nail in the coffin. Kolento's got a full grip. He's got so much life to work with the branching paths in his hand. That's 12 extra armor he can get. I think Jason's done for in this game as well.
A tangled web.
Sort of continuing the trend of Aggro Druid underperforming so far into day 1 of the tournament. Now, we've had a pretty small sample size, but maybe this is foreshadowing things to come. Maybe players that brought Jade Druid made the better read of the tournament. It was pretty split, but I think Aggro Druid did have the edge at the end of the day. And you can see JasonZhou, he kind of just knows. It's like, yep. With 9 cards left in the deck for Kolento, it was reasonably likely that he were to draw that second Spreading Plague.
JasonZhou concedes the game. And Kolento is 2-0 in this match. An elimination match between these two. And again, JasonZhou came into this one, he said he felt confident, he felt comfortable, but Kolento said the exact same thing. He was very confident in his preparation. And he's obviously very confident in his play, and he's showing why.
Yeah, and Kolento, he sort of has the words to back it up. He says just what's on his mind, and a lot of times it comes across like he's trash-talking his opponent, but I mean, when you have the play to back it up, and you have the decks to back it up, and the results that Kolento's had to back it up, you can't really argue with the solid person that he is, but you know, Kolento coming to this tournament with probably more experience than any of the other players here in one of the most stacked fields ever. So let's take a listen at some words from him.
Well met.
Hello, my name is Alexander Malsh, but you might know me under the name Kolento. I'm from Ukraine. My favorite thing about Hearthstone is winning, while making smart moves. My favorite card is Engine Watcher. My favorite deck is Taunt Warrior. When I'm not playing Hearthstone, I'm normally either sleeping or playing different games. I like different genres.
Some signs in the crowd for
yeah.
Kolento as well, and you know, in China he was dubbed Pack-Lento by a lot of players because I think he's one of the most voted players probably of all time in Choose Your Champion. People always have faith in Kolento.
He's one of the most popular players of all time.
That's true.
When it comes to tournament play, he might be the most popular player.
In China, for the Spring Championship, the crowd was cheering louder for him than the local Chinese players. So that should tell you something.
That hand from Kolento is extremely good.
It may not seem like it. Months ago, if you had told me that a hand with 2 7-drops in it was extremely good,
Well,
I would have slapped it right across the face at
are they 7-drops?
for a while. Oh, he does miss his turn too, and the one thing that Aggro Druid does best is capitalize on slow starts. Because at a certain point, you can't do everything. You can't remove and develop.
Now here's the thing. Tara Creeper is a hell of a card. It is 3 mana and it provides 3/5 defense versus this. JasonZhou's Power of the Wild is not going to get him out of the situation with most of his minions alive.
Savage Roar will.
It will, but look at what happened last game. You used Savage Roar, you got to wide board positions, and then couldn't take advantage of them. I think you do definitely Savage Roar here, but then that's going to be followed up with Sarnet Chain Gang.
Well, he could just make a wider board state and then just hold. Because Taro Creeper is not that threatening of a minion on your opponent's turn. It goes down to 1 attack, it doesn't contest anything. So what JasonZhou here could do is he could just develop Druid of the Swarm and the Dire Maul.
Is everything about poisonous maybe?
Maybe, yeah, that could be an option as well.
That's really the thing about Tar Creeper, is it doesn't really provide a big offensive punch. So oftentimes the best counterplay to it is to develop into it. Try to take advantage of the fact that your opponent can't really provide an offense with this card, and then eventually you push through its defense in a better manner. But Kolento's just going to keep throwing minions into the fray, and they don't fear the Reaper if your cards get cheaper.
And then you play Corridor Creeper? Was that where I was supposed to go?
And second Power of the Wild makes this board incredibly powerful as well. And this is really what Aggro Druid's designed to do, is create these wide board states, buff up the board, and then kill your opponent before they can do anything about it. And we haven't been seeing that a lot today, but this is looking like one of those games.
Yeah, and this is what Rogue is not designed to do, to deal with opponent wide board states. They have Vile Spine Slayer, which is a great tempo tool to deal with one big threat.
And look at Jason. I told you, when he's feeling comfortable, his posture will change. He will look more confident and more focused. The previous 2 games, he has looked worried. This game, not so much. And rightfully so. He is setting up lethal on Kolento next turn.
I think even through Serenite Chain Gang, it's lethal damage plus some.
He's got 22 damage, 23 damage, excuse me, through a Serenite Chain Gang. So the hand was quite good from Kolento, but the hand from JasonZhou was also quite good.
He has even more than that because he can use his hero power to kill off one of the Serenite Chain Gangs. So he's got 25.
You're right.
And those Corridor Creepers, not a good hand if there's not really any board to fight early on.
Druid of the Swarm was a massive benefit to Jason in this game.
Yeah. And I like the slowdown, understanding the matchup, and just leaving the Tar Creeper alone and developing more minions, going wider on the board. He knows he's not going to be punished by Rogue for doing that. He could clear off 2 things with backstab plus SI7 agent, but he probably would have used that earlier on in the game. So making the read that Kolento didn't have those early game tools.
Kolento's just got to hope this is enough.
Well, here they come.
But it's not enough. JasonZhou, we're going to game 4. And now, mind you, this is the deck that JasonZhou has really struggled, I think, to find wins with thus far. The Tempo Rogue hasn't been kind to him either.
But he finds it. Despite the deck struggles over the course of the day, JasonZhou is going to keep his hopes in the tournament alive and bring it to a game number 4. But JasonZhou still has an uphill battle. Will Kolento be able to close out this series, or will JasonZhou bring it to a game number 5? We'll find out right after this.
The quest for Hearthstone's greatest prize continues when the Hearthstone World Championship returns. Take 5 with Team 5.
Who would play Garrosh in a movie?
What actor should play Garrosh?
I wonder.
Oh, that should be,
Russell Crowe. Why not?
That's not a valid target.
He's kind of got the bristly voice, and of course they'd add some effect to make it even more menacing.
I love Clancy Brown. You saw him in the old Highlander back in the day in the 80s. The guy is an awesome villain.
My thanks.
Vin Diesel seems like he makes sense. He's got the voice for it, and I hear Vin Diesel loves Warcraft.
Victory or death!
Let's say Sean Connery.
I need a weapon.
You never really know if he's evil or if he's on the good side. I'd be scared of him.
Well played.
Jason Statham.
I must choose.
But it's obvious.
Wow. It's got to be The Rock.
I will crush you.
I mean, like The Rock, right? I think it has to be The Rock.
That minion already attacked.
I mean, you want it to be a little bit kind of lighthearted in a way and get that Hearthstone spin on it, and I guess The Rock maybe could pull that off.
I think that, or me. Rock or me. Either one.
I cannot do that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2017 Hearthstone World Championship. We're in elimination match territory, Admirable, and JasonZhou is one game away from his hopes at a world champion title swept out from under him.
He's got to win.
He has to win.
And China has struggled all year long in HCT. JasonZhou and Omega Zero are the last two hopes for China to bring home a big title this year. Now, you heard Jason say that he thinks Omega Zero is the best player in China, but JasonZhou's pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah.
That's a good opening hand. Kolento's got the same. And we've got ourselves a good old-fashioned slugfest here. A lot of what JasonZhou's going to have to do is wipe out pretty much everything Kolento plays.
Yeah.
If he can't do that, this is going to be a pretty disastrous game. But from his perspective, he's been seeing his Tempo Rogue lose to this matchup over and over again. I imagine he's got to feel comfortable right now.
Yeah, but Kolento's is slightly different, and I kind of like Kolento's version better, if only for the double Elven Minstrel. Resources in this matchup are so crucial because you need to be able to present threats while still playing around the very suite of removals that Priest has. And this opening hand just sort of exemplifies the strength of these two cards in particular, Prince Keleseth and Elven Minstrel in the matchup. He can Prince Keleseth on 2, and then coin Elven Minstrel on 3, drawing 2 of those buff minions from his deck, getting those additional resources while still building a reasonable sized board that JasonZhou has to deal with. So I love...
Well, it sounds a lot harder when you put it that way.
It's a little bit harder, but I definitely like this.
Is he just grabbing the Keleseth right now? He's getting bored with Jason.
He's just mousing over. What does this card do? Oh,
wow, that's good.
All my cards?
Yeah, that's the one to play, and the job just got harder for JasonZhou. You heard me say it earlier, it's the fact that now a lot of Kolento's minions survive those utility tools that JasonZhou has in the matchup. Sometimes with the Spirit Lash or with Dragonfire Potion. Not every minion from Kolento will always die in those circumstances.
Yeah. And you know that the biggest thing about Prince Keleseth, not only does it make the removal awkward, but it also makes it so that minions that didn't otherwise prompt removal, all of a sudden prompt removal. And I think Serenite Chain Gang is one of the biggest, culprits of that. 2/2/3s maybe not that threatening, but all of a sudden 2/3/4s, you're more likely to play Dragonfire Potion. You're more likely to play Psychic Scream on a board that wouldn't otherwise call for it because of the fact that everything just is a little bit stronger in the deck.
That does beg the question, though. Do you want the more pressure now, or do you want options for later on? So far in this matchup that I've seen, Kolento has opted to play a much more value-oriented game.
I like Elven Minstrel here
maybe
almost every time.
I feel like he might smell blood in the water because he went with his turn 1 Swashbuckler into the Keleseth rather than hold the Swashbuckler and try to get some patches value out of it. And again, the way that he's played in general is that he likes to play for value more than he likes to play for board. So that leads me to believe that even if he thinks that the Serenite Chain Gang might be a better play, that he can get even more value down the road by taking his options right now.
Yeah, and of course there's the fact that by coining out Serenite Chain Gang, he kind of strands the Elven Minstrel unless JasonZhou were to play a minion he could backstab. But this will be a board clear, so JasonZhou has gotten through this first wave, but so much reload potential from Kolento.
I mean, you said it. So the Serenite Chain Gang, the Creeper getting so much less expensive. Even the Onyx Bishop, it looks kind of innocuous right now, but that's 2 more bodies at the same time. And that's really the kind of value that Kolento wants in the matchup when Jason's trying to 1-for-1 all of his cards.
Yeah. And now it gets to the point where when you're the Temper Rogue, you just start building big stuff and hitting them in the face.
Yeah. Look, 2 Bone Mares is a lot of big stuff. And Keleseth makes the stuff even bigger. And those Bone Mares are kind of what I'm talking about with Dragonfire Potion. Suddenly it just leaves around 2 6/1s on the board if that's JasonZhou's main clear option.
Yeah. We've seen players a lot of times, even just today, when they play Temper Rogue, play too much around removal. They start trading, making weird trades with minions, but the way you win with this deck a lot of the times is just to ask the questions and force the Highlander Priest to have the answers.
I am a little bit surprised that Kolento didn't opt for the SI7 agent and the Corridor Creeper here. That would have been 10 power on board plus 2 damage. And he opted for 6 power instead. You know, maybe exactly this kind of turn was on his mind, where he's like, if I have to use my health total to clear Raza, it doesn't really mean anything to me.
Yeah, there was no indications that that could have been a possibility. Looking back at JasonZhou's mulligan, he pitched away all of his cards. So it's not like, you know, Kolento could have had the read that Raza was in the opening hand, and he wanted to exactly backstab SI dagger up the Raza, and that's why he didn't play it last turn. I think he just wanted to play so that SI7 agent was active more and get more value of it than just the first 2 damage to the face. Because that damage would likely be healed up.
Sure, I don't disagree with that, but if JasonZhou's investing 2 mana to heal rather than play stuff, I'm pretty happy with that, because then my stuff gets to hit him in the face too. It's just quite curious.
It all comes back to one thing, if you ask me.
What's that?
Hitting him in the face.
So that they have less life.
Yeah, so that they're dead.
Kolento just plows all of his minions right out there. He says, you have Dragonfire Potion. I'm going to make you have to have it.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes,
well,
you make him have it. Well, JasonZhou's, he's got it.
Yeah. Well,
he didn't, but he's got it.
And is that the look on JasonZhou's face? Like, I can't believe I just drew that.
Yeah. And he's got Psychic Scream to follow it up. He's missing a couple key pieces, but with that much removal in hand, JasonZhou might be in a good spot. Double Shadows.
And the Onyx Bishop as well. The Onyx Bishop's bringing back 2 minions right now.
You could...
Let's just say that brings back Corridor Creeper. Just think about it for a second.
There once was a man from Gilneas.
Well, he could Shadow Step the Elven Minstrel to try and get additional value out of it.
Whoa. Kolento attacks with his weapon. That is quite unusual.
And also Shadow Stepping the Elven Minstrel before he gets to attack with it.
I'm telling you, he plays for value.
He does. He 100% plays for value. That's right.
Well, this play is also for value. JasonZhou's about to draw heaps of cards. Oh my. And I think Kolento's in a lot of trouble now. That Dragonfire Potion draw was absolutely insane for Jason. Without drawing Dragonfire Potion or the Akanai Soul Priest for a Circle of Healing a turn, I think he was outright dead.
Yeah, he would have. There was 14 damage being represented on the board. Kolento's next draw was Shadow Step, so he would have had access to Leroy. He could have Shadow Stepped at that turn, and then Leroy Shadow Stepped the following turn since it would have been 3 mana, and that would have been what, 19 damage. So yeah, he would have been dead. That Dragonfire Potion bailed JasonZhou out of what could have been a rough situation. But this turn he's able to draw a ton of cards, have a presence on the board going into Bone Mare turn, which is huge. And now this is an awkward situation for Kolento, because if he uses South Sea Deckhand to combo the Elven Minstrel, that means he can't get immediate value out of Bone Mare next turn with South Sea Deckhand plus Bone Mare. So despite the Kel set and what seemed like a strong start for Kolento, JasonZhou was still able to put a stop to it. Granted, he does have a lot of strengths left in his hand, and JasonZhou has yet to draw Shadow Reaper Anduin, so he could still make a board full of big stuff and land some damage. But
that's a lot of answers in Jason's hand.
He's got to get through Psychic Scream, and then by the time he's able to build a big enough board, that's 3-4 turns down the line. That's 3-4 draws that JasonZhou gets to draw Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Kolento's still hunting for ways to fight back.
He just wants the resources.
I quite like that trade. That shuts off a lot of the card draw potential that JasonZhou could have because the Wild Pyromancer's dead. It keeps his 3-2 alive as well. If he simply value trades, that Wild Pyromancer could wipe out his entire board in that situation. So,
and also, we can see that it would have given draws from the Acolyte of Pain as well.
That's right.
And of course, this Northshire Cleric can't really run into anything while being damaged. And Circle of Healing's gone, while Pyromancer is gone, Shadow of Pain is gone, so pretty much everything that would answer besides Holy Smite, this Elven Minstrel, is gone. So definitely like that trade.
Yeah. A lot of times it looks like it's easy to just pick up the 1/3 there and keep your minion alive on board, but that would have cost Kolento massively had he done that. And something I think that Kolento is actually trying to do with this game plan is he's trying to make Jason just use a lot of his cards so that way his reach with Shadow Reaper Anduin is more limited.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing to do because at the end of the day, just Prophet Velen plus Mind Blast a lot of times is enough to get it done at that stage.
Yeah. But something to think about though is again, Kolento, you know, he ran into that Dragonfire Potion after he kind of pushed all his minions into the middle, and since then, how would he have gotten an assault going? I think this is actually quite a reasonable game plan given the circumstance.
South Sea Deckhand plus Bone Merit option to get in that 6 immediate damage. But Kolento going to offer another line.
There's some pretty high value cards in play for JasonZhou right now. I think Kolento's still got to fight for some cleanup work.
Curious Glimmerroot could pick up some additional like burn damage, could pick up Mind Blast, could get his own Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Greater Healing Potion is a way to fight back against your opponent if you've exhausted a lot of their resources.
Is he going to fatigue him?
I don't think he's going to fatigue him, but I do think that he could run him out of stuff and then pick up the pieces from there. I think this is a real possibility right now.
Yeah, Kolento has played a value game all the way through. Outside of one turn where he went, you know, pretty big on the board and got, you know, slightly punished. I don't even know if you would call it a punish by Dragonfire Potion since you have to get that removal out eventually. But since then, shadow stepping Elven Minstrels. Not really playing for the board very much. Trying to draw as much as possible and make awkward boards for JasonZhou. That's been the name of the game. You know, he's been holding on to Bone Mare. That last turn, that's a play that a lot of players would just say, you know what, South Sea Deckhand, Bone Mare, hit you in the face. But again, he's just trying to say, well, maybe I gotta slow down a minute.
These are the kinds of situations that really make the difference between a good player in Hearthstone and a world-class player. Is they recognize these strange deviations they have to take at times, and you know sometimes it's enormous risks they have to take to try to find that window of opportunity.
But it kind of is a race against the clock because as soon as JasonZhou draws Shadow Reaper Anduin, Kolento is on that clock.
That's why it's important for him to be killing as many of JasonZhou's resources as possible. It's just been card draw after card draw for JasonZhou these last few turns though. Still holding the Psychic Scream. But he's yet to find Anduin with 7 cards left. The other thing too is when Kolento sees enough of these removal spells, eventually it's tougher for JasonZhou to answer all of it. You know, what if Psychic Scream is still buried at the bottom of the deck?
There's still some other stuff he has to play around. Alkanai Soul Priest is in the deck, but Circle of Healing's gone. Kazakis is still one of those last 7 remaining cards as well, so that often can find removal in tight spots. Priest of the Feast remains as a way to maybe heal back up.
I think that's about as good as it's getting this turn.
Yeah. And I can imagine we're not going to see a deviation from the game plan that Kolento has solidified in the last few turns. He's playing for value.
This is what he's done his entire career.
Yeah.
To win tournaments.
And Kazamikis picked up.
That's something Jason's got to think about as well. I'm running out of ways to completely take care of everything.
Mind Blast was the only spell left in JasonZhou's deck. There's no other spells. There's a Tar Creeper, an Alkanai Soul Priest, Priest of the Beast, Lyra, and Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Jason's just drawing by healing up.
He's trying to get there. He needs to find.
Still no Anduin.
5 cards left.
And I think this is the one window of opportunity Kolento has to get something done.
Put out some big minions and then hope that the next card is not Shadow Reaper Anduin or one of the cards that he drew the previous turn. I mean, if he can dodge Shadow Reaper Anduin for a couple more turns and stick these Bone Mayors, then he's got some game left, but he is running out of time very quickly.
No Anduin.
Bottom 4.
At last, a worthy disciple.
That's a lot of damage, though.
Makes it a little awkward since Bone Mare's had 6 health and the target's at 6 health. He still has the Silence in his hand. Really, the only target left in the deck is Edwin Van Cleef as that Silence target, but deal 4 damage to all minions, draw 2 cards. He's only got 4 cards left in his deck, so if he just wants to find Anduin and almost guarantee that he's going to get it next turn, unless it's the very last card in his deck.
Quickly.
He's going for it.
Finds it.
I don't think Kolento's going to be able to stave this off.
No. There's just not much left in his deck that is going to do much of anything.
Just never found the opportunity for pressure. You know, a big one to look at too is the exact draw of Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah.
If JasonZhou had drawn Alkanite Soul Priest, he would have gotten the board cleared, but he wouldn't have had the Circle of Healing to draw as many cards as he did. And that was really the big catalyst to this game position afterwards, was that he got so many card draws afterwards. It's quite a tall order for JasonZhou's Priest to answer the road in quite this fashion. But he's done it. And the entire game since then, Kolento's been on the defensive, trying to get anything going.
I mean, there's a couple plays you can look back at. The plays where he played for value, where he could have landed a Bone Mare. He did give JasonZhou a lot of time to draw Shadow Reaper Anduin. It's hard to play a long value game.
The Minstrel on turn 4, rather than the Sarnet Chain Gang.
Yeah, could have put more power earlier on. Maybe gotten in damage, then Leroy Shadows plus Shadow Steps could have been enough in the later stages of the game. But now he's sort of forced to make this big play, hope that Shadow Reaper Anduin is the very last card in the deck.
But it's not.
Cards.
And that should spell the end for Kolento. I just don't think he has enough gas left to get through this, and JasonZhou's looking at lethal damage just next turn.
He's even going to clear off the Doorshire Cleric. He's like, I don't want anything weird to happen.
Might as well.
There is a random card in his hand. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to find out.
And Kolento can do the math. JasonZhou will have every single card at his disposal. And just the Velen plus Mind Blasts and Hero Powers.
Well, has a created Mind Blast, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he doesn't.
So he doesn't know 100%.
Yeah. And I believe Jason is a little bit off of lethal damage
after Greater Healing Potion.
Immediately.
Yeah, he is.
I'm out of cards.
Well, Kolento did bring him to fatigue.
That's quite interesting. Kolento actually doesn't play the Edwin Van Cleef, I believe, to try and play around maybe some of the random generation from JasonZhou or the Shadow Visions. Maybe if he can't play a card or two, he doesn't have quite enough damage to push to get there. That'd be the only reason not to play it.
I mean, it's hard for him to hope that he's going to be able to live multiple turns for JasonZhou to take multiple fatigue hits. And I agree with him with a 7 damage Leroy. That's a pretty bold call. Looking at the remaining cards in Kolento's deck, he doesn't have anything that deals immediate damage besides one copy of SI7 Agent. So his maximum damage in a turn would be 10 from the 7 attack Leroy and SI7 agent and dagger hit. So JasonZhou at that stage would have to take fatigue damage for 7, 8 turns. It'd be a lot.
I believe the only way to live is the Leroy running into the Lyra, backstab a token, attack a token, and then play it in Van Cleave. And alive at 1, technically, not really alive.
I mean, Kolento's has to be, counting the spells at this point and knowing that there's the 1 generated spell from Shadow Visions and then now 1 random spell from Lyra. So it's all minions left.
Shadowy thoughts.
So maybe Kolento thinks that could be an opportunity, would be fatigue. And if he draws, say, Vilespine Slayer, he would have a way to deal with Velen if JasonZhou were to just plop it on the board.
I usually think given hand tracking, he can't quite literally reduce that Shadow Visions card to Mind Blast, because JasonZhou had drawn that later on in the game. It was the last spell in his deck.
I suppose, yeah.
You can see there's only one option for the Shadow Vision. But either way, it's going to Game 5. JasonZhou chokes out Kolento's resources, and the value game plan was not able to work. And so the Tempo Rogue versus Priest has also been struggling. And a lot of players have opted for value situations rather than pure pressure and taking their damage. And I think that has been a difference.
Yeah, I think so too. It's not like Jade Druid where you can just out-armor all their resources and eventually they have a finite amount of damage because it's all card draw and then the Velen combo. But
gotta kill him.
We'll see what happens in game number 5. But coming up next, Doc Pone taking on Tom 60229 in the Group A winners match. Tom, one of the most storied players from the Asia Pacific, and Doc Pone's sort of a newcomer to HCT this year, and an underdog by many people's standards, and even his own.
That's right.
He loves being the underdog. He said that means there's less pressure on me. There's more pressure on everybody else because they have to beat me.
Yeah.
But back to this one. It is going to come down to that final game for this elimination match. One of these two players, JasonZhou or Kolento, will be eliminated from the World Championship after this next game, and it would be a pretty bitter end since both players have been to a World Championship before.
Oh yeah.
Both players top 8 as well in those respective World Championships, with
4.
Kolento in 2014 and JasonZhou in 2016.
4 World Championship appearances in this match. Multiple titles throughout this year. Something interesting about Tom, actually, is that right after the release of Kobolds and Catacombs, he eliminated Kolento from the All-Star Invitational in Taiwan.
He did.
He's waiting in the upper bracket versus Doc Pone. And this is an important match here. A lot of times you look at this matchup and you think about Prince Keleseth's Shadow Step. It's such an important combination. And you think about these super powerful turns, but a lot of what this match really boils down to is things like SI7 Agent, South Sea Captain, the Vilespine Slayer. The timing of those tools to offset your opponent's value is so vital in this matchup. And the player who partitions those resources more properly is typically the one that comes out ahead.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, using those resources to be the last one standing on the board. Because, it's not called Tempo Rogue for no reason. It's a deck that thrives on being ahead on the board and being ahead in tempo. And a lot of the times, the first player to drop a Bone Mare and make a value trade is the player that wins the game. Because at that point, usually both players have drawn enough cards to where Bone Mare is on both players' minds, and the person who comes out on top going to that turn 7 a lot of times wins the game. But there are swing turns that are possible. Vilespine Slayer is, the biggest one at that. And Corridor Creeper is another one where you can remove your opponent's board and drop a 5/5. All of a sudden, they're on the back foot when you were the one on the back foot going into that turn. So definitely an intricate match with a matchup with a lot of combat. That's what I like to see in it.
Yeah. The Keleseth Shadow Step draws, those happen quite rarely in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And Jason,
there's a stat.
Stark contrast of the play here too. Kolento takes forever on turn 1. JasonZhou immediately passes. Does he give anything away when he plays that fast?
As long as you're consistent, I don't think you ever give anything away. And JasonZhou usually is a pretty fast player when he doesn't have any options available.
Yeah, Spellstone pickup from Kolento as well. 5-mana destroy a random enemy minion. You have to play Death Rattles to upgrade it, so that's not really happening in this game. But it is a 5-mana removal spell in a deck that is quite light on removal.
There's no Death Rattles.
So many options.
Outside of a Swashbuckler pickup into Undercity Huckster.
Into Undercity Huckster.
Into another Undercity Huckster.
Into more Undercity Hucksters.
And then all of a sudden that Onyx Spellstone becomes quite powerful. But even just removing one minion is oftentimes what you need in this matchup.
And so notice that Kolento has chosen to go wide on board here immediately and try to put Jason to a test. You know, if he doesn't have the backstabs, the SI7 agents, the South Sea Captains, this pressure adds up to a lot of damage over time. And Jason gonna even take that a little bit slower. He says, I want the Edwin Van Cleef right now. And rightfully so. That power and health stacked onto one card is very dangerous for Kolento.
Yeah, let's say he goes for the other option of South Sea Captain. Yes, he trades over one minion, but then all of a sudden he doesn't have any combo activators for Edwin Van Cleef. So he opts to go for it now and be able to follow that up with South Sea Captain to be able to clean up this board state, instead of straining that Edwin in his hand for what could be a long time.
And with Captain, with Corridor Creeper and Sarah Knight Chain Gang, I think Jason's got the big advantage. You know, coin is another factor in this matchup, not only because you have that extra tempo swing, but you also have the extra cards. So when all your cards match up evenly, going second can be that big advantage you need.
Yeah, now this Edwin Van Cleef can 2 for 1, 3 for 1 in a lot of stages. And then it becomes that resource battle. Kolento has to use a lot of resources to deal with Edwin Van Cleef. That means he won't have them for when Corridor Creeper comes in.
Choose soon.
And I kind of like this. He's going to get immediate value out of the buff from the South Sea Captain by preemptively trading at least one of these minions into Edwin Van Cleef. Because let's say that Edwin Van Cleef trades onto his South Sea Captain this turn, and he hadn't made that trade. It'd be at 3 health, and you'd have to trade all of his minions in order to get through it, whereas now he can just get it with either one of the minions or a dagger up.
Yeah, this was a very wise play from Kolento, but this is working out to be awfully troublesome in the coming turns.
Ooh.
He's got his own Keleseth, but he's fighting on the back foot.
Yeah,
so that little Flame Elemental is actually really important right now, too. That's going to activate that Vilespine Slayer at some point. So the next 2 turns, Kolento actually has a bunch of ways to start fighting for and removing this board position. The Captain's going to be threatened immediately by this Keleseth, so I'm curious if Jason finds the Sarah Knight Chain Gang here to go with it. Fits the curve naturally, so I imagine so. He protects right there. Suddenly that random destruction on the Spellstone is not quite as appealing, and that is not the time to draw Corridor Creeper.
No. I think the Keleseth last turn was a reasonable draw because otherwise he wouldn't have anything to play. It fit well with just play a 2-mana minion, dagger up with the additional 2 mana. But he is still way behind in tempo. And JasonZhou is the one calling all the shots so far.
This is where I think JasonZhou is going to try to turn that corner. When your opponent doesn't kill one of your minions, that is typically the turn to get aggressive. However, Sonya is a card that can drastically change those game plans. Whenever one of your other minions dies, you get a 1/1 copy for 1 mana of that same minion into your hand. And with this many Sarah Knight Chain Gangs being able to block those board states, I can see JasonZhou finding some trades here.
Yeah, they summon copies of themselves, so it does summon just a 1/1 copy, but 2 1/1s with taunts. Actually,
that's infinite value.
It is. It's going to continue to protect the Sonya. The Sonya is going to continue to res the Sarah Knight Chain Gangs. How long can this go on?
Well, not very long if Kolento doesn't draw anything to deal with this.
Bone Mayor still a turn away with 4 1/1 tokens on the board. Vilespine Slayer and the Onyx Spellstone don't really do much. He's just going to chip away and then eventually be able to kill him with Leroy.
Sonya is so powerful in the right circumstance.
Yeah, this is the exact situation that I find myself in all the time, where I wish I had a Fan of Knives. I mean, I think everybody can feel the same way, that they hate it when their opponent plays Sonya and then plays 2 1-1 Serenite chain ganks, summoning an additional 1-1 Serenite chain gang. That's when you really wish you had Phantom Knives. But then they'd get them all back.
He's got to Vials find the Sonya!
That's brutal.
Choose 2.
17 points of damage available for JasonZhou, so he's a little bit off. Doesn't have a dagger, so can't get the charge damage in with South Sea Deckhand.
He's got a massive lead in this game, though. Again, he is free to continue being very aggressive with his damage and just keeping Kolento on that back foot, saying, do you have a way to check this? But this is the one turn for him to really put a lot of thought into. Is Bone Mare too much for me to come back from?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find a spot where you lose if you just continue to remove your opponent's board over and over again. We talked about it earlier. Rogue does not deal with wide board states. If you continue to kill your opponent's minions and create a wide board state, eventually you're going to chip away enough damage and make your opponent's turns awkward enough to win the game. You don't need to take additional risks. And that's exactly how Jason's playing this one.
Full board.
Corridor Creeper plus Bone Mare. That would absorb 9. But that would still be enough to push through.
I don't think Kolento's got a way out of this.
Yeah. Oh, it would block 10 actually, the Corridor Creeper's buff. But I believe that JasonZhou still has 12 damage behind that even after buffing this Corridor Creeper up.
I'm counting 12. This is the time that JasonZhou is going to double check it, triple check it, quadruple check it.
He trades in, he does have to make sure that he saves the buff for the South Sea Deckhand. So it's Corridor Creeper, the 4 1-attack minions, and then the dagger, or the South Sea Captain. A few ways that he could do this, but he just needed to make sure that he kept the buff on the Deckhand. But that is going to be JasonZhou taking the series, eliminating Kolento, and moving on to the decider match.
And Kolento said it, he has faced JasonZhou a lot of times. JasonZhou's gotten the better of him in those series, and once again, that is true. One of the most storied players of all times falls to the hands of JasonZhou.
And a second European player eliminated in the first 2 elimination matches of this World Championship. The struggles for Europe in this tournament continue. But JasonZhou takes the victory and moves on, keeping China's hopes alive, at least on day 1. He's still got a Mega Zero to play day 2. But standing by on stage with our winner, it's Raven.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Congratulations on the win. How was that series for you? Because at one moment it looked quite rough, but then you managed to make the comeback.
It's pretty half serious. I was pretty lucky against